I'd like to introduce to you today's first speaker, Vivek Sarin.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for getting up early in the morning to listen to somebody from economic development speak to you. I mean, that's real excitement, right? So it is a real pleasure to be here with you all today and to share with you what is going on with the Cabinet of Economic Development. And first and foremost, if I may introduce myself, my name is Vivek Sarin. I think there's a write-up in the booklet there. But like many of you, I come from the private sector. I have never been in the public sector before. I have been a business owner, an entrepreneur, and a manufacturer for all of my career. And I am one of those guys that have sat in the corner office before talking about how more business people are needed in government to help solve problems. And my advice to all of you is be careful about how loud you say that, because in fact it may be your number one day that gets called and you're put into service. Do we have a clicker for the slides? Okay, next slide please. Thank you, Brandon. I want to, from a personal level, I want to connect with you. So as I was mentioning, my career has been in manufacturing for 26 years. But we have a rather unique setup in economic development where Terry Gill, who is Secretary of our Cabinet, Terry and I, who graduated from high school together, have been in business for 26 years, not together, but we've been in manufacturing. And our governor as well, Governor Bevin, for many of you all know him and his background. He comes from the private sector. His whole background has as well been in manufacturing. And I selected this particular slide that you see up before you right now because all three of us, we have a deep, deep understanding of what your world is like in manufacturing. We have walked the factory floor. We have dealt with production schedules. We understand what it means to expedite orders through the process. We know what it is like to have to raise money to fund our operations. We understand the ramifications of protectionist measures on steel and materials, for example. I remember when President Bush W. passed the steel tariff in 2001 and what it meant to have to figure out how to take a 25 to 30% surcharge to market. I and myself and the governor and Terry have all lived through the season when you're waking up one day and offshore competition is able to deliver product to your own customers 30% below your material cost. And what that means to have to reinvent your company and attempt to diversify and reset it. And this particular picture here, it speaks to all three of us having graduated from the School of Hard Knocks. This is a picture here of Matt Bevin's factory after it was struck by lightning one night. He's a sixth generation owner of a manufacturing company. And if you think about hardship, I remember getting a call from him the night that this happened, and he shared with me he was en route to Belltown, Connecticut, and this is what he encountered when he got there. And you know, he didn't quit, he didn't throw in the towel, and he rebuilt that company, and he's today still operating as Bevin Brothers, one of the last manufacturers in America of bells. So the point of all that is we have a great, great appreciation for all of the dynamics that go into manufacturing today and how hard it is to do what you do. So with that in mind, as we go about doing economic development, We are in a position today where we're taking that manufacturing experience and that manufacturing know-how, and we're applying it to the state of Kentucky. And this collage of pictures that are before you represents just some of the industries that we're connecting with and we're reaching at the moment. But you know, the governor has made it clear that he has one simple vision for Kentucky. And that vision is for Kentucky to become the engineering and manufacturing hub in America. And if you think about manufacturing as a whole, you think about the fact that if you were over in Europe and you had to make a particular product and you had to select any one country that you might manufacture that product, the one country that might come to mind that you would think about producing it is Germany, for example. Great apprenticeship program, a great culture for manufacturing, and known for making a quality product. But when you come to America and you think about manufacturing in America, there's a lot of states that do manufacturing. But there's not one single state that claims to be the center of excellence for manufacturing. And so the governor has stepped forward in his 2.5 years in term now and made it crystal clear that we're going to have one clear vision in economic development, and that is to drive Kentucky to become that center of excellence for engineering and manufacturing. Now, that does not mean that all that we do is only centered on manufacturing, and we'll say no to wonderful new opportunities like the Amazon Prime Air Hub going in northern Kentucky. But when you think about the significance of your all's roles in the economy as manufacturers and the ripple effect that happens when a manufacturing operation is thriving, and the fact that statistically 7 times more jobs are created when a manufacturer is doing well, we see that Kentucky is really well positioned to become that leader in the entire country. And it's an exciting vision, and it's one that we're pursuing with great passion. At the national level, manufacturing is on the move. I hope perhaps many of you all just feel that after going through particularly 2008 and 2009 and a season of either hardship or great contraction, or a season when many of us saw so many manufacturing jobs moving offshore, we certainly are excited that President Trump is certainly driving an America First agenda. But then on the heels of that, and I will say a little bit before President Trump got to office, Governor Bevin laid his vision for Kentucky to be the center of manufacturing. And what that should say to all of you here today is that manufacturing is definitely on the move. And if you look at some of these statistics here, manufacturing plays a very, very critical role to the economy of Kentucky. And perhaps the most important statistic is the one at the end of the slide, which talks about Kentucky ranking 4th in growth since 2009 in the United States. Did you know that? Did you realize that you all are part of something very significant going on in terms of the vibrance of manufacturing in America as a whole? I want to go through a couple of slides here quickly. These are slides that from our Cabinet of Economic Development, we have a cabinet meeting with the governor every 2 weeks. And out of our cabinet, we're running our cabinet, which is a group of 70 employees. We run it very much like a business. And so like any good, healthy business, you have key performance indicators or matrix. And to give you a flavor for what our matrix are and how we track our own performance and contribution to the state, this first 2 graphs speak simply to what our sales pipeline looks like. So we have just over $7 billion of new business in the pipeline right now. This is CapEx, as we would call it. This is coming off of a year last year when Kentucky set a record for capital investment of $9.2 billion. So talk about manufacturing being on the move. The previous record that we had ever seen in the state of Kentucky for new business investment was $5.1 billion. Last year, we hit the high water mark of 9.2. And as we're rolling through 2018, we have over $7 billion in the pipeline that we certainly are eager to close and progress on. This equates to just over 15,000 new jobs if we were to land that. If you take a look at what the total investment has been over the Bevin administration, the first graph on your left speaks to how we are tracking now at just over $14 billion in new investment and over 41,000 new jobs created as a result of that. So manufacturing, Kentucky is very much on the move. We're excited about these trends. And if we go to the next slide, please. The other thing that we pay careful attention to are basically wealth matrix, as we call it. So we're certainly trying to measure our impact on greater things like household income, which you can see is trending up, the gross domestic product. We have a couple more that we track as well. The unemployment rate, which is now continuing to creep down, and the labor participation rate. And these two are rather important to think about because for many of us in the room, we would see the unemployment rate beginning to nosedive down. And beyond a shadow of a doubt, the number one issue for any of you as manufacturers here today that keeps you awake and that you have to be thinking an awful lot about is workforce, attraction, retention, and development. And the unemployment rate is an interesting statistic to track because while it may be nosediving, Kentucky historically has had one of the worst labor participation rates in the country. And through mechanisms like the Medicare 1115 waiver, which Kentucky is the first to pass, which has not even been fully implemented here in the state, we're very excited to begin taking measures to get many people who are in this economy not participating, frankly, off the sidelines and engaged in the workforce. So we track this carefully. Now, all of these statistical accomplishments would not be made possible if it was for not some other key legislative or other developments that are going on simultaneously. And I wanted to take a moment to highlight for you some of the things that are making Kentucky very marketable right now. Many of you might know about the right to work legislation that was passed a couple years ago and the elimination of the prevailing wage. We're now moving into a flat corporate tax rate of 5%, which we believe will help our competitiveness, and a phase out of the inventory tax. Pension reform has begun to happen. It has not happened to the fullest extent that we were hoping, but we're beginning to address that issue, which is weighing down our economy. We're working very hard to realign the workforce, we call it the workforce delivery system, throughout the entire state so that it's in alignment with the key industry clusters here in Kentucky. And if I may elaborate on that for a second, we've had multiple meetings with a lot of the leaders of all of our learning institutions. And we've been discussing with them the reality that young people coming out of college with a college degree today, if it's not the right type of degree, if it's not in alignment with the needs of our economy, whether it's in agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare, logistics and distribution, food and beverage, if a young person coming out does not have a credential that's in alignment with those key clusters, then quite candidly, the return on investment of that education is certainly, from our viewpoint, zero. And we've had some really candid discussions with university leaders about the fact that if you are looking at educating engineers, for example, in the state of Kentucky, and the retention rate of engineers is only 70%, what do we have to do to march in the direction of that retention rate being 100%. Because as a taxpayer, if I am contributing any portion of my taxes, any portion, to the education of an engineer, and that engineer graduates from the state of Kentucky and leaves Kentucky instead of working in your businesses and goes to another state, then I as a taxpayer, each of you as a taxpayer, had an ROI on that engineer of 0. And we begun to have these conversations with educators to ask them, what does it look like for the curriculum in education to be in alignment with the needs of employers? And so, for example, both the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville have now appointed liaisons. These positions never existed before, and they're just volunteer positions, but they've appointed liaisons who are now beginning to regularly come and meet with the Cabinet of Economic Development, our team, and hear firsthand what are the employment needs of all of the companies where we're entertaining new growth opportunities. So back to those matrix slides I was showing you before about the pipeline of $9.2 billion and the current pipeline of over $7 billion, we've made a point to the educators that if you want to be at the tip of the spear where industry's workforce needs of tomorrow are most clearly known, please come engage in our cabinet, and we'll be more than happy to be an open book and show you what the employers of tomorrow are looking for. And finally, the last bullet point on this slide represents how we're working very closely with the Trump administration on issues like tariffs and NAFTA. Do we exactly have a seat at the table? No. But Governor Bevin has an incredibly close relationship with Vice President Pence and President Trump. He is in Washington regularly being asked to weigh in on important issues, and these issues have included NAFTA and the recent steel tariffs. And it's been our pleasure, it's been a real privilege to have the ability to speak up. We've had several meetings with Secretary Wilbur Ross on this subject, and it's something that we keep top of the radar screen. As I think about closing and a message to you all, there's 2 points that come to mind. Number one is a point as manufacturers to be encouraged. And I say that not because of all of these statistics or points that are on this particular slide in front of you, but be encouraged because we are on offense right now. Not just in myself and Terry Gill and Matt Bevin, but you have in office at this time a group of business people, experienced CEOs, folks who understand how manufacturing works, and we're driving an agenda right now that is very proactive. By the end of this year, we will be visiting Japan. We will be making a pioneer trip to Korea. We've never done that before. We will be making our first trip to China, our first trip to India, and we will be in the United Kingdom. And we are out globally pursuing foreign direct investment, working proactively not just to sell the state of Kentucky, but also to attract more businesses that come to Kentucky that could be potential customers or potential suppliers to you. And our focus, again, is very much on manufacturing so we can continue to strengthen this ecosystem that we enjoy. And finally, in closing, if I could ask each one of you all to have one takeaway, it would simply be get engaged. Those of us who come from the private sector and are serving for a very short period of time in the public sector, I never had a compartment for what I'm doing right now, never. In my daily journal, every morning, I write down how many days I've been on the job. If Matt Bevin is reelected, I write how many more days are left. And if Matt Bevin is not reelected, my third number is how many days are left. I share that with you simply because we're working with a high degree of urgency right now. We're just a bunch of business guys, have our sleeves rolled up. We're out hustling the competition, And to every one of you from the private sector that's sitting here right now, if you have an hour a week, if you have any kind of time on your schedule, if the team or the staff that you lead could be made available, my request of each of you would be, if there was ever a time for you, your company, your staff to get engaged with state government, it is now. We need reinforcements. And that can take on a lot of different shapes. We have various boards and commissions of a business nature that need to be populated with your talent. We just went through the legislative session, and by no means did we accomplish what we felt would be comprehensive tax reform or comprehensive pension reform. Some great advancements were made working with the legislature, but there's still a lot of work to do in those areas to get Kentucky on a pathway to be most competitive with other states. You, each one of you, could play a really vital role in connecting with legislators and being a voice for industry in this. So I give you on this slide my personal contact information. And I really do encourage you write down the email address or the phone number. And if you have an idea, you have a thought on getting engaged, please drop me a note. And my final point in closing is, for this short period of time that we are here serving, we're not in Frankfurt to be served. We're here to serve. And so in the business of serving, I get up every day excited to see who's going to be put in my path that I can be helpful to. Terry Gill has that same attitude. Governor Bevin has that same attitude. And if you're a manufacturing company here right now and you have an issue of any kind, you have a struggle of any kind, and we can serve you, please drop us a note. Our cabinet works incredibly well across silos to resolve problems and tackle opportunities. And please know it would be our privilege to help your manufacturing company become even stronger. So thank you, and hope the rest of the session is real productive.